Hello, and welcome to Change the Face of Yoga, teaching toddlers through golden oldies. I'm very excited to be talking to lots of yoga teachers who will explain their passion for teaching yoga to students with different ages, physical fitness levels, wellness levels, and different goals. They will explain the benefits of yoga for these students and will be including teacher tips and pose modifications. I am Stephanie Cunningham of Yoga Lightness, and I've been teaching over 50s for 10 years. So this area is my passion and the passion of many other yoga teachers that you will be listening to in this series. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get started. This is episode 005, and it's with Dodi Wilson, and it's yoga on and off the mat. Our guest today is Dodi Wilson, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about her. She actually started yoga by buying a library book when she was a small child and started doing the yoga poses on her own. And then she's gone on and has really explored a good part of the world of yoga. I'm very impressed with all the things that she's done. She's has taught 2,000 hours of yoga classes, has her 500-hour training. She's also started her, I don't ever say this right, Ayurveda training, and also yoga therapy. So she has a really wide spectrum of knowledge that we're going to talk about today. And I just wanted you to tell us your story, what you are doing that really reflects getting out of teaching in addition to the mainstream yoga. Because you're doing Ayurveda, you're doing yoga therapy. You told me that you taught seniors for a while.
Okay. Well, it all started when I was taking my 200-hour in just, yoga. I had taught yoga for years for a group from a gentleman that taught me, and he was teaching me, at the time I didn't realize, he was teaching me a lot of Kundalini yoga, and that was his lineage that he had learnt. And there was no certifications or anything like that. So after that experience, I didn't really know that you needed certification for yoga, and I had been teaching, and I remember teaching and actually having my son nursing, during final Shavasana, because, I was a stay-at-home mom. I really didn't have much income, and I was doing it not for money because this was a free class, and I didn't really realize that yoga was supposed to be taught for money, honestly. So I remember my son just sat and ate his little Cheerios while I taught, and then he knew, that he could just wait after, and then I would nurse him during our final Shavasana. And 2 years went past, and I ended up having 3 children, and they were all, like stair steps, and all I really had was a ability to teach yoga. I mean, that's really, I had given up my career to be at home with my children. And I remember not knowing what I was going to do when my husband at the time left. So yoga got me a job, and I actually was headhunted for the local YMCA, and then actually headhunted for another gym that were looking for yoga instructors. And at that time, it had become a fitness yoga world. And at that time, in my small community, they wanted a certification. So I remember almost being angry that I had to go out and get certified in something that was so spiritual and touching and loving to me at the time. And that's when I embarked on my 200. And I remember actually saying to my friends, what they're teaching me is not real yoga. This is gym yoga, and I'm very frustrated at even having to get certified in this because I have experience and I have my physical practice and my mental, this is my mental outlet and my spiritual outlet.
Mm-hmm.
So as it progressed, I then started collecting certifications on any kind of physical activity that I could get to help me pay the bills. And that is exactly what I did. And pretty soon I became I was such a hard worker, and because I needed to pay the bills and, pay for food for my children, and I was very dedicated, and of course I wasn't going to miss because I couldn't miss a paycheck. But what I didn't realize at the time is I was building such a huge, not only following in different, people in different walks of life, but also a huge resume. So I remember going into my first senior fitness class, and it's an actual trademark of, it's called Silver Sneakers, and I went to the certification, and I went to this class, and I remember the first class that I taught in Silver Sneakers, they ate me alive. They, they pretty much scrutinized anything that I could do. And I remember going home and crying that night. And I knew I had to cover that class for the rest of the week. So I talked myself into saying, okay, honey, you need to toughen up, put your big girl panties on, and go back in there. And I would have never thought seniors would have been able to do that to me. As a teacher, everybody teaches you. And that is exactly what I did. And I used them as an example, and everything I learned from Silver Sneakers to teach me about, any kind of arthritis and osteoporosis and osteopenia. I started collecting this and just adding this to my yoga career. What I also at the same time was learning Pilates and kickboxing, and I was then adding this also to my yoga. And then what happened was my lessons of pure yoga, what I thought was pure yoga, not this gym yoga that I had to teach, but the asanas and the pranayamas, and then also the lessons, the yamas and the niyamas, they started to blend in with these classes I was teaching. And all of a sudden, my seniors wanted more yoga. My seniors wanted me to tell them a happy little thought at the end of each class. And I started bringing and writing my own short messages on the yamas and the niyamas, and sharing them with my classes. And it just changed. Instead of me changing who I was able to bring in, the benefits of what I considered real yoga into these gym class settings.
I really wanted to explore something you said in your website, which was you also have a studio, and you offer teacher training in that. And it said on your website that you wanted to design a teacher training program that included the things you wish you had been taught in your first teacher training program. Can you explain a little more about that? Because I thought that was a fascinating idea.
Well, and I'm not at all saying anything bad about any teacher training, but what I found was when I went in, I actually did a 500, or it would have been a 300 hour. I started a 300 hour before I even completed officially my first 200 hour. And what I noticed is what they were talking about in this next 300 hour, I hadn't been taught or exposed to. I guess that's the question. That's the real wording. I had never been exposed to some of these things. So here I am feeling
like what?
Like certain pranayamas, certain bandhas, Ayurveda. I mean, there was so many things that I was I just felt very clueless to, that it just felt like I was not I was not exposed to it in my 200, because honestly, the first 200 just felt like, well, first of all, I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but sometimes just getting through it with your life, you're not retaining as much as you could be, and you're worried about the poses, and you're worried about what your homework is, but you're not really connecting the dots between why does this apply to this, or what is this going to do? And your teacher has so much influence on how you teach. It's amazing. So when I had the opportunity to have my own school, I tell all my client or my students that are coming in, I say, hey, you are going to be exposed to so much. You are going to be the master of having just a little bit of knowledge on everything when you leave here. And if you find something on the internet and you find something in a book and we don't discuss it, I want you to bring it to our attention so we can at least shed a little light on it, because I want none of my students to ever go on and not understand things the way I felt when I entered my first 300-hour program.
Okay. I understand. I think that the Yoga Alliance and I'm in Australia, the Yoga Australia, they have to do so much stuff that you have to do to actually then award that teacher training, that it seems like, at least looking back on it, when I read that, I thought, yeah, there's some things that you really aren't prepared for when you're just starting out, and it would be nice then to have to come back and look at some of those things. I just did a course on Patanjali, well, very short one really, and it was really interesting this time, whereas the first time around it was very difficult. I was having a heck of a time with it. So I agree with you. It's a hard thing to do, to make sure that training really prepares people, because they're so concerned about the poses and how to do that and to sequence and to be a teacher. And it's a lot to put into one course, I think.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And, there's many that do that very well. And I think that sometimes, to apply them all together and give them a way to look at it so that they can understand and compare it, and I tell my clients and my students that even though, because I am a certified yoga therapist, my program is not a yoga therapy program, but I will do my best to explain why we're doing what we're doing through the eyes of a yoga therapist as well, so that they can see that this is why. And if you want to advance, this is where you're going to go with it. So that I always tell them that I'm going to give you a little bit of information so you can put it in your tool chest. And then that when you get that question, where you can go to get further information. So I'm not going to give them everything or be prepared for that. But if I give them a little bit of knowledge that brings it down to earth so that each one of my students can understand, they're going to teach from the heart and know that this is what they're doing, teaching in the future.
Excellent. Sounds like a lovely program. So you've really explored a lot of yoga. You said you're in your second year of Ayurveda, and you've done a yoga therapy in your 500 level, and you said you've looked at different kinds of courses, that you've taken those 200 level courses, several of them. Mm-hmm. So how have you put all of this together to as a basis for how you teach and how you do your teacher training?
Well, how I teach is the first thing that I do anytime I walk into my room for teaching, and it doesn't matter what age, what shape, what size classroom, I try very hard to always teach to the lowest denominator in the room. And this is how I train my trainees as well. And people don't understand that, but I believe it's most important, because the people that can already do amazing yoga probably practice at home. And it's not that I want to ignore them, but I want the people that could get left behind not to ever get left behind. And when I'm teaching, it doesn't matter if I'm teaching an advanced rock and roll yoga flow or my seniors in a chair. I always try to bring the person that might have the weaker muscles or be a little less flexible to the point where they can feel like they feel their yoga and they can experience the class. So, sometimes I do have favorites. I'll be honest. We all have favorites in our class, but I always try to make the experience of yoga appealing and very pleasing for every student. And I try never to leave one behind. And what that has brought me in my experience is those people will come to you maybe months down the way or maybe even a year down the way, and they'll thank you. And they'll say, I know you never gave up on me. I know that I did this because I had that confidence that you gave me. So it doesn't matter if you're doing yoga for cancer or yoga for Parkinson's or, yoga for curve. I used to have a class it was yoga for curves, and it was for people that were overweight. And it was just an amazing class because by the time you think, oh, they're maybe not ever going to get that Warrior 3 or, they start popping off with it, and you give them the chance to really prove to themselves that they can. And it's just an amazing gift that gives back to the instructor over and over, time and time again. And it's made me very blessed in so many ways because I get to see that. And, I get to teach them how much I love yoga by sharing it with them. And it's just an amazing thing. I have, like I said, I do yoga for Parkinson's, and, they have done so many different exercise programs, and there are so many studies on Parkinson's and ballet or kickboxing or whatever. And there's so many of them that have tried everything, and they come to me and they say, can you just help me to breathe? Because this is what I need. And they may not know that it's pranayama, and they may not know that it's a vata imbalance, in them. But I know that I can help balance their right and left hemispheres simply because of the knowledge between yoga therapy and Ayurveda, and mix those and give them that gift to be able to maybe not do the physical form of the yoga that most people know, but they're practicing a much deeper level of, yoga than most of us understand.
I just think that's a perfect explanation of why yoga is for everybody. And I really want to thank you for that, because it is just really important to remember that, yes, there's a very valid part of yoga that is very physical, but there's also other parts of yoga, and that by putting them all together, in some ways we can probably help almost everyone progress some, whatever their goals may be. And I think that was just a beautiful explanation, so I want to thank you for that. Can you tell us a bit about your students? I think all yoga teachers have some favorite stories about their students and the benefits that the students have felt from the yoga that they're doing with you.
Sure. I also teach, I do one-on-one personal yoga classes or personal sessions, I guess you would call it. And I have a young girl that for probably the last 2 years, she sees me on a weekly basis. And her parents notice a complete difference. This little girl, and she's a woman, I understand, but she still seems like a little girl to me. She comes to me weekly, and she has been diagnosed with arthritis, anxiety. She's also been diagnosed with some other forms of things that no one really understands completely. And she has sugar diabetes, and she's just a lovely girl. And what I've found in the last 2 years is that me working with her individually one-on-one simply gives her an outlet. It gives her something that she can do that no one is going to judge her for. It also gives her the ability to become stronger on her own pace, and no one's forcing her to become stronger. It also gives her a way out so her anxiety does not take over her. And it also gives her the ability to know that her sugar does not have to control her, and it's just like her mind, or what we call the ego mind, that she can control it. So watching this girl literally grow up in front of me for the last 2 years has been so rewarding, because it's like one of those amazing things that you're given a gift to actually look at. And yes, she's my client, and she might be one of my favorites, but what I know for a fact is that the first year she came to me, she was sick 22 days that year for school, and she had missed 22 days. She was on academic probation, and there was all kinds of things. No one understood her. No one wanted to take the times, and the doctors just kept giving her more pills. So within 2 years, I believe last year, she was a freshman, and she had only missed 10 days. And so far, we're into her sophomore year, and I believe she's missed 5 days, but 2 or 3 of those have been actual doctor's appointments that she had to take off for. So to see it and know that her personality, her strength, and her whole outlook on life has changed because of this yoga, that's one thing. But to see on a physical level of just numbers, to see how many days that she needed to take off for sick days and compare those to 2 years ago, that's just amazing. So yes, she's one of my favorites.
You had a post on your Facebook page about using yoga off the mat. And an example of that was regulating your breath to bring down a stress level. Mm-hmm. I really liked that idea of disseminating what you can do outside of the classroom. But I really liked you kind of giving that idea out there. Do you do that in your classes to say, this is something that you can also use under different circumstances?
Oh, absolutely. When I teach I'll go in to say that my personal study and something that I enjoy for my stress level is to keep going back over the 8 limbs of yoga. And I do a daily, not really blog, but I do on my Facebook pages. I do these fancy little pictures you might have saw on my Restoring Light Yoga and Yoga Therapy Facebook page, and I do little quotes that I say in my class, or that I usually have them Monday through Friday, but they all go back to the stories or the lessons of, maybe the yamas, the niyamas, all these things in the 8 limbs of yoga. And I share these with my clients, like I say, and it gives me a creative way to really look at my life and let go of some of these things that just really keep a hold of us. And I do share those in my class. And a lot of times when I'm working in my class is when these thoughts actually come up. There's many times in my class that I tell them, especially my seniors, I'll be looking out at a sea of my seniors, because I teach one class a week at a certain club, and it's a senior club, and I'll have anywhere from 20 to 35, seniors in front of me, just looking at me, sitting in chairs. And I talk to them on that same level, not as a teacher, but as a friend. And there's many times we go over things like our ego and, these gifts so that they can see how yoga doesn't just apply to our physical body, but yoga really does apply to our spirit. And that's really, really important to me to be able to share those lessons with them, especially because they've never been exposed to that before. And many of them come into yoga thinking it's one thing, and when they leave, it's just something completely different. And I love to be able to teach them that they don't have to have limits or expectations, not in my class or in life. And I think that it's very important for us as yoga instructors to keep learning on a daily basis about ourselves. And that's what brings us the great results with our students. I think that sometimes, just like any other job, when you make something you love your job, you stop educating yourself, you stop growing yourself, and then what happens is you become stale and it becomes a job, and then, oh boy, now I don't really want to go to work today. I want to stay home with my kids and play, but I gotta go to work, right? So I think that continuing to grow as people and continuing to learn, even if it's just us going over the yamas and niyamas every day, maybe, coloring in a coloring book and thinking of how we can apply these lessons, these lessons that are over 5,000 years old to our daily lives and how we can change them just to make them work. And I think that if we all did this as yoga, healers, and that's what we really are, we can go out there and share that with them and use our personal experiences off our mats, opposed to everything just being on the mat. I never want to be a yoga instructor only on my mat. I want to be a yoga healer every day of my life, and even if that's just healing myself.
Excellent. Really good. I love that. Being a yoga healer every day of your life. I think that's an excellent quote. I think we'll use that because that is probably what most of us are trying to progress to, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it sounds like you've made great progress in that area.
Working.
That's wonderful.
Working. Every day is a working in progress.
Yeah, well, I understand that. Every day is a working one, yes.
I have 3 teenagers, don't forget. So boy, am I tested on every one of those every day.
Thank you so much for this podcast interview. You've just blown me away. You've done just such a great job, and I've seen a really new aspect of yoga. I mean, when you say things, I think, oh yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I haven't ever articulated it that way before. So I really, really want to thank you for your thoughts. You did a really excellent job, and I want everybody to know how to get a hold of you if they'd like to. So this is Dodi Wilson, and her email is all one word, restoringlightyoga@gmail.com. And her website is restoringlightyoga, all one word, .com. Mm-hmm. And also a Facebook page at Restoring Light Wellness Center. So
or Restoring Light Yoga Therapy.
Oh, okay. Or Restoring Light Yoga and Yoga Therapy. Okay. So thank you so much, Dodi. I really appreciate you calling in, and I think this was a great podcast. I certainly learned a lot.
Thank you so much for just giving me the opportunity to get those words out, and I hope that it inspires and just has people kind of looking at yoga and yoga teachers differently.
Oh, I hope so too, because I think you're a wonderful example. So, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Namaste.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much for that wonderful interview. Now for the listeners. To be part of changing the face of yoga, teaching toddlers through golden oldies, please take a picture of yourself doing your favorite yoga pose. and email it to ctfoy@yogalikeness, all one word, .com.au. That is ctfoy@yogalikeness.com.au with your first or full name. I will upload it to the Instagram folder, Changing the Face of Yoga, so we will have an album of the spectrum of students who represent the face of yoga. Please download and review this podcast and tell your friends who might be interested. Thank you, and let's get together next week.